Narayana, 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 Narayana. Sri Ganeshaya Namaha, Sri Saraswatyai Namaha, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om Tat Sat. So we are looking at this chapter, Skillful Means, in which the arrogant people have first gone away, which is said to be the prerequisite. That is, somebody should be willing to trust, believe, and accept it. So, which is termed as Shraddha. Only those people are qualified to begin with the teaching. That's what it meant. And Buddha says that there is only one teaching, which is called Buddhayana. And then he continues. O Shariputra, is on page 31. O Shariputra, I too am now like this. Having understood the various desires and deep-rooted inclinations of sentient beings, I teach the Dharma according to their capacities, through the power of skillful means, using various explanations and illustrations. Here, the Buddha is saying in the past, the Buddhas used certain methodology, and now he is explaining his own stand as well. O Shariputra, I too am now like this. Meaning he is also like the previous Buddhas, having understood the various desires and deep-rooted inclinations of sentient beings. Because in the assembly, based on the people who have assembled in front of the Buddha, by gauging their inclinations and their desires and aspirations, because they have different desires. Somebody wants nirvana, freedom from birth and death. Somebody wants to understand what is the truth of this existence. Somebody says, I want to have complete gain, complete enlightenment, and I also want to help others. They are committed to that. So based on that, he says, their desires and deep-rooted inclinations of sentient beings, I teach the Dharma. Dharma means the practice. Here I teach the Dharma means the teaching or the practice according to their capacities, their intellectual capacities and inclinations, through the power of skillful means. I use upaya, different techniques, what is suitable for them, using various explanations and illustrations. Not simply giving a statement, but give some examples and illustrations so the other person can grasp the fundamental principle behind the teaching. Then on the next page, page 32, O Shariputra, you should wholeheartedly accept and preserve the words of the Buddha. Accept and preserve the words of the Buddha. The words of the Buddha Tathagata are never false. There are no other vehicles, only the single Buddha vehicle. So don't think that there are many means for liberation. There is only one. There is only one means. Very important to understand. Because we get this idea, notion, that there are different ways to enlightenment. Bhagavan Sri Krishna has not even said bhakti is a separate yoga. So as it is understood from the bhashya or the commentary of Acharya Shankara, bhakti is also a part of karma. Because bhakti or devotion needs a devotee. Means an individual is needed. Only when the notion of individual is present, a transactional or empirical bhakti or devotion, act of devotion can happen. So that is also part of karma yoga alone. Bhakti is part of karma yoga alone. Okay? Not jnana. But in the top sense, you go through the karma yoga first. When the mind is qualified and when it attains certain qualifications, the mind is able to stay with one understanding that all this is one. And then the real phase of the Sankhya starts, or the Jnana starts. Here the Buddha is saying, thereupon the Bhagavat, wanting to elaborate the meaning of this further uttered the verses. In the fourfold assembly, there were 5,000 monks and nuns who are excessively proud, laymen who were arrogant, and laywomen who were unaccepting. They did not see their own defects, being faulty in self-discipline, and clung to their shortcomings. These of little wisdom have already left. So this is what we need to examine for ourselves. How is our state of mind? Are we able to see defects in us? Or we think we are already perfect? If we don't see defects in our own life, how can we take the teachings of a teacher? Guru. The One is not even ready to accept a guru. Such people cannot be taught. Only when the student submits to the teacher, he will be able to teach and show guidance. This is what the Buddha is saying. Those who left were arrogant, but we don't need to simply go by the words. What is the quality which describes the word arrogant? He says they are not able to see their own defects. What is it they are lacking? They are not able to do any self-examination of their own defect. Being faulty in self-discipline. They don't have any discipline. They don't have any, in the Gita it is said, Tatparaha samyatendriya. These are not samyatendriya. Means they are not having collected indriyas, means controlled indriyas. They run behind desires. That's what it means. They faulty in self-discipline, means they are tempted by the desires more than committing to the discipline required for knowing or learning the true knowledge. Being faulty in self-discipline and clung to their shortcomings. They have their shortcomings and they cling to their shortcomings. They are not willing to discover means to overcome their shortcomings. They see positive in their own shortcomings. So they don't try to discover the source of those shortcomings and eliminate them. So such people. These of little wisdom have already left. So this is what is having little wisdom. And they are not prepared for teaching, they already left. Another paragraph on page 33. The Buddha teaches nirvana to those with dull faculties, who are satisfied with lowly aspirations and attached to birth and death, who have not practiced the profound path in the presence of innumerable Buddhas and are confused by suffering. So, first of all, the arrogant or the people who cannot see defects in their own life cannot be even taught. They have already left. Then there are people who see the shortcomings in their life. They want a teaching, but their vision for themselves is small. Such people, Buddha is referring to here, saying the Buddha teaches nirvana to those with dull faculties. Means their intellects are not sharp. You teach them which is demanding intellectual stuff, they cannot sustain it. They cannot sustain investigation for long. So for such people, Buddha teaches nirvana, means freedom. What is that? Who are satisfied with lowly aspirations, lowly or lonely or their own self-oriented aspirations, and attached to birth and death. They think something is born, something is dying. And they think I am being born, I am dying. They are not even willing to give up that concept. For them, what you can teach is only freedom from birth and death. They are not ready for highest teaching, saying there is no birth, no death. But these are people stuck with this idea of birth and death. So attached to birth and death. And they think they will have another birth and so on. Okay? Who have not practiced the profound path in the presence of innumerable Buddhas. Because they have not met many jnanis in the past. Thereby, the teachings of those jnanis, which is unique and single, has not really taken roots in their brains, in their minds. So they think birth and death is real and they want freedom from birth and death. That's all they got. And are confounded by suffering. And they see that in every birth, in this living birth, there is growth, then there is old age, there is disease, there is suffering and death. So they are confounded by this, confused by this. So they want freedom from it. Having devised this skillful means, Having devised the skillful means, I enable them to enter the wisdom of the Buddhas. So now, for such people, Buddha devised the skillful means. What is the skillful means? Means of nirvana. How to extinguish suffering. How to extinguish suffering. That is the skillful means, to introduce them to the wisdom of the Buddhas. Is it the complete wisdom of the Buddhas? No. But he introduces them. I enable them to enter the wisdom of the Buddha. I enable them to enter the wisdom of the Buddha. But I have never said that all of you would attain the path of the Buddhas. I enable you to enter. I told you earlier about the birth and death, freedom from birth and death through nirvana. But I never told you that it will make you a Buddha. I enable you to enter the path of the wisdom of the Buddhas. The path of the Buddha. This is what he told Sariputra. Okay. On page 34, continuing, who have heard even a single verse of the Dharma that I have taught will all become Buddhas. There can be no doubt about it. Same, Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayad. So even those who practice a little bit of the Dharma will be free from great disaster, great fear. So Bhagavan Sri Krishna says in the Gita, once somebody commits to the path of Jnana, he is free from all the sins. Purujinam santarishyasi. Api chedasi papebhya sarvebhya papakruttamaha sarvam jnanaplavenaiva purujinam santarishyasi. So by taking onto the boat of Jnana, the boat of knowledge, all the sins you will, the ocean of all the sins you will cross over very easily. So the same thing he is saying, even when you who have heard even a single verse of the Dharma that I have taught will all become Buddhas, all Jnanis. There can be no doubt about it. In the Buddha's worlds of the 10 directions, there is only the Dharma of the single vehicle. Apart from the skillful means of the Buddhas, there is neither a second nor a third vehicle. A Buddha merely uses provisional words in order to lead sentient beings. All the Buddhas appear in the world to teach the wisdom of the Buddhas. Only this one thing is real. The other two are not true. The other two are not true. In the end, a Buddha does not save sentient beings through an inferior vehicle. The Buddhas themselves abide in the Mahayana. The Dharma that they have attained is adorned with meditation, wisdom and power. And through these, they save the sentient beings. I would be ungenerous if I were to lead and inspire even a single person to an inferior vehicle. Having attained the highest path, the universal Dharma of the Mahayana, this is simply not possible. If anyone takes refuge in the Buddha, the Tathagata will not deceive them. A Tathagata has neither stinginess nor jealousy and has detached himself from the evils of the phenomenal world. That is why the Buddhas of the 10 directions are the only ones who have no fear. Having a body adorned with the marks of the Buddha, emitting a ray of light that illuminates the worlds, and received and revered by immeasurable sentient beings, I teach the signs of the true aspects of the phenomenal world. So here, as we went through this paragraph, what the Buddha is saying is that since I myself have attained the supreme knowledge through the Mahayana, and in my broad wisdom and compassion, there is no reason why I would shortchange and give only an inferior vehicle such as the Shravakayana and say, oh, this is enough for you. I really want to give. Whoever have remained here after the 5,000 arrogant people have left the assembly, to all of you, irrespective of your present qualification, I want to give you Mahayana only. I want you to become a Bodhisattva and become another Buddha. But based on your capacities, I expound it in 3 different ways, which people call as 3 vehicles: Shravakayana, Pratyeka Buddhayana, and Bodhisattvayana, or Buddhayana singly. So he teaches, a Buddha teaches only that. He says there is neither a second nor a third vehicle, because these are all a unified teaching. A Buddha merely uses provisional words in order to lead sentient beings. In the beginning, if I tell you that there is a means which is called nirvana, which is freedom from suffering, and I teach you 4 noble truths, it is only a provisional word. It is not the final word. It is only provisionally for you I am telling this is nirvana. The true nirvana is only through complete enlightenment of the knowledge of the Buddha. That is, there are different aspects of that. Not simply by getting rid of suffering or gaining understanding of how suffering comes in this life, you will not be completely enlightened. If I say so, it is only provisional, but the final word is that you have to follow the single yana or Buddhayana. A Tathagata has neither stinginess nor jealousy, because there is no other. He does not see another. Whereby jealousy or stinginess, he will shortchange and give a lesser teaching. And has detached himself from the evils of the phenomenal world. The self is already detached from the phenomenal world. So that is why the Buddhas of the 10 directions are the only ones who have no fear. Who have no fear. Vitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. Upanishad says, Vitiyadvai bhayam bhavati. As long as there is something second, then there is a cause of fear. Vitiyadvai means only by that alone fear is caused. When the Buddha has attained the knowledge of the one self of all, the Tathagata Garbha, or the Dharma Dhatu, or Dharmakaya, there is nothing else to fear about, fear from. So he would proclaim the highest teaching. So he says, I teach the signs of the true aspects of the phenomenal world. I teach the signs of the true aspects of the phenomenal world. What you see, what appears in the phenomenal world is not what I teach. I teach you the true sign. I teach the signs of the true aspects of the phenomenal world. Okay? So the true aspects of the phenomenal world, of their empty nature, of not having the self, they being simply apparent things, not having really anything of their own other than the substratum, which is the Tathagata Garbha, or the one self of all. So Buddha says, on page number 36, they enter into the jungle of 62 false views, such as this exists or this does not exist. So what happens is, these are called false views. Means if you compare the Hindu teachings of the Shad Darsanas, and each Darshana says, finds fault with the other Darshana and says some aspects which they are expounded, some aspects which are expounded in some other Darshana are not consistent with their own teachings, etc. And then they show faults. So, at that time of Buddha, he listed out in the other sutras, you can see, other suttas, you can see that there are 62 different views, and Buddha says they are all false. Before propounding his theory or his notion of Mahayana, they debate all those 60 different views, what is reality, which is a very common thing in all the philosophies, because you need to establish that this particular philosophical view is correct, so you have to first of all find what is wrong with the other competing views. So he says they enter into, the people who are not really qualified, what happened? they will enter into the jungle of 62 false views, such as this exists or this does not exist. So they propound and teach that self exists. They hang on to that. And some people go and say self does not exist. So this self exists or this does not exist to an individual self. In the Madhyamika, they do not commit to either. They say both are unstable. So no views. So that is where the Sunyavada comes into picture. But however, the statement relates to that. Then comes on page 37. Even though I taught nirvana, it is not the true extinction. Even though I taught nirvana, it is not the true extinction. Every existing thing from the very beginning has always had the mark of quiescence. Mark of quiescence. This is what is the Tathagata Garbha. So he says, every existing thing, you say this table exists, this chair exists, this man exists, this woman exists, this dog exists. Wherever we are saying, he's saying everything, every existing thing from the very beginning, from the birth itself, what we call as manifestation, has always had the mark of quiescence, that Shanta. Mark of quiescence is that Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Savigneya, which is said in the Mandukya. So that quiescence is always present. Whatever you say, this exists, that existence is this Tathagata Garbhaya, or the oneself of all alone. The heirs of the Buddhas who practice this path will thereafter become Buddhas in the future. So the heirs of the Buddhas who practice this path will thereafter become Buddhas in the future. So what he's saying is, if a man practices the path of Bodhisattva and the path of the Buddhas, meaning what is expounded by the Buddha in their own life, they become Buddhas because they also become Jnanis. They recognize their oneness with the one self of all. In the future, because it requires complete understanding. But in the common parlance, in the future births. With the power of skillful means, I have presented the teaching of the three vehicles. At all of the Bhagavats teach the path of the single vehicles. So even though they teach three vehicles, all the Bhagavats, yet all of the Bhagavats teach the path of the single vehicle. It is only single vehicle, which is the Buddhayana or Jnana Marga, or the one self of all. Marga of the one self of all. All the Bhagavats taught the characteristics of all dharmas with the power of innumerable skillful means, using various examples and illustrations. He also refers to this, meaning all the great teachers have devised means by using illustrations and examples to, what do they teach? They taught the characteristics of all dharmas. What is the true characteristic of any dharma or the phenomena? Nothing. Because they are all appearances in the self. The phenomena have no true reality of their own other than the Tathagata Garbha or the true oneself of all. So they taught the characteristics of all dharmas as non-dual, okay? With the power of innumerable skillful means. How do they explain it? Because it looks as if these phenomena are real, but you need to show them they have no reality of their own. To be able to do that, even though we are bound in this conditioned world, we have to point to an unconditioned state of the phenomena. So that is why they need skillful means to transcend the limitations of the intellect. With the power of innumerable skillful means, suitable for the individuals, based on their capacity, using various examples and illustrations. Then another line. The great sage Lord has illuminated the highest meaning with diverse skillful means. All these sentient beings who encountered and heard the teaching of the Buddhas of the past and who accumulated various merits through the acts of giving, dana, integrity, sila, integrity, sila. If you remember, we said discipline and integrity. Discipline and integrity. So here, integrity, sila, perseverance, kshanti, means being able to do sustained effort. Perseverance, sustained effort, kshanti, and diligence, virya, means no slackening. You are putting the same invigorated effort. You will never become weakened or loosened. Sometimes you do with intensity, with concentration, sometimes no concentration, you are sailing by. Not like that. You make a full diligent effort, meaning virya, means shakti or the same energy. Okay, same diligence. Meditation, dhyana. Dhyana or meditation is an important aspect. Perfection in that means you are able to do dhyana consistently and dwell upon things that you need and cut through the conditioning of the mind. Dhyana and wisdom, prajna, means out of that the knowledge comes. The knowledge of oneness of the individual, oneness of the universal self, one self of all, and emptiness of all phenomena. And the reality of the life, that the conditioned life is always painful because it is conditioned by birth and death, old age and disease. So there is nothing to cling here. So ragadvesha, there is no scope for it because that is only going to condition further and further the suffering. So you need to give up. And by employing the means of the bodhisattva, the perfection, prajna paramita, you can overcome the suffering, you can understand the empty nature of all phenomena, including individuals, and finally come to a true understanding of the oneself of all, the Tathagata Garbha. So these are the 6 perfections. Having certainly attained the path of the Buddhas. Have certainly attained the path of the Buddhas. So here he has said about the people who took to the teaching, and he is summarizing that. Okay, understanding the deepest desires of the entire world, of the devas and humans and other beings. The great sage Lord has illuminated the highest meaning with diverse skillful means. So because he has understood the desires and the limitations of the individuals, according to them, the Buddha has illuminated the knowledge, and all those sentient beings who encountered and heard the teaching of the Buddhas of the past, and not only listening to the teaching, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, Davan Navate Gnanam Tatparaha Samyatendriya. Tatparaha means it is making an effort committed towards that goal. Tatparaha. Samyatendriya. And also they have controlled the mind going in other direction. Samyatendriya. Those people attain the Gnana, Krishna says. Here he is saying, and who accumulated various merits, means for being able to excel in gaining this knowledge, the merits are dana, means charity, not clinging to that. You don't really identify yourself, one does not identify with these objects of the world. He is able to let loose this dimension to become one with all the phenomena and also become a substratum of the phenomena. That is dana. Not being identifying with any possessions of objects, limited objects, conditioned objects, so that he can become unconditional. And integrity sila means, as we said earlier, integrity sila means body, mind and speech. Body, mind and speech being focused on one, not split in their own goals. That is integrity. And having no doubts. That is sila. And perseverance means being able to overcome the obstacles that they are presented, that get presented while doing the sadhana. That is the perseverance. And diligence means consistent, steady effort, exerting in a uniform way, consistently. Shanai shanai varamed buddhya tritagrihidaya. You start slowly, but put a consistent effort. And intensity. Intensity is what is being consistent intensity. Is virya and meditation. And you exert into meditation to discover the source, etc. Dhyana and wisdom. Through that you gain the prajna, or which we have explained, are the truth of the Four Noble Truths, and then pratitya samutpada are the dependent origination, and finally complete enlightenment, which is the nirvana, truly, which is equivalent to the transcendental powers and the knowledge of the entire universe, sarvagnata. They have certainly attained the path of the Buddhas. So whoever follows this have got equivalent knowledge like the Buddhas. So the teaching so far, we will continue again. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Hari Om Tat Sat.